Regarding the first question, I've been contemplating metaphysics, the metaphysics of artificial intelligence recently. And facetiously, I've come up with the idea of the kind of meat physics of artificial intelligence. And I've been thinking about the metaverse as a meatverse, and how the metaverse works with the smart city. And yeah, I mean, my idea is that I'm wondering now, when we think about the metaverse, like, where is our consciousness? Where is it? Where is the unconscious as well? Where is it displaced across the planet? And how does artificial intelligence somehow gain access to it? And of course, this is a kind of a fantasy of Elon Musk, the idea that, we can dip into the unconscious and manipulate it and upload it and so on. So I've been thinking about the metaverse and its relation to the smart city, and looking at Korea and Japan as some examples of that. And yeah, trying to see the movement away from metaphysics to meat physics. So it kind of meant, as I kind of looked from this movement from metaphysics to the meatverse, I looked at science fiction, and I looked at Baudrillard, and I looked at Westworld, the film in the 1970s about a simulation, like amusement park. And I looked at what Baudrillard said about America and the fact that Disneyland conceals the fact that the whole country has become some kind of theme park. It's quite funny the way that he said it. So Westworld seems to me, and now the new release of Westworld by HBO recently in the last few years. And I'm wondering about the change from the original kind of representation of the cinematic representation of Westworld to its current kind of iteration. And that made me think about the Peacock streaming service of Brave New World, and the change from Huxley's work, and the kind of intimation of kind of sex and violence and pornography in the earlier works 50 years ago, and now the kind of hyperrealism of our models, our meatverse of things like Westworld, which are totally pornographic, totally violent. You can do whatever you like there, act out every kind of fantasy and whim without any kind of guilt. And the same with Brave New World, how it's represented on the Peacock streaming service. And that made me wonder about artificial intelligence, because that's how it works in Westworld. So the artificial intelligence kind of prepares a meatverse without ethical kind of constraints. And that's the question of democracy, really, where that comes in. So there's no ethical kind of resistance at all. We just act out our base kind of drives. And recently, with the space colonization, just months after the kind of dying down of the corona pandemic, space colonization, space tourism by the rich and the wealthy, made me think about Brave New World and the alphas and the betas and so on. And it made me think about the colonization of the brain, and the way that all things are on the agenda now. Nothing is off the agenda, the exploitation of space, the exploitation of the brain. And again, it made me think about Elon Musk's fantasy. As I said, the kind of technology is deeply fascinating, but it's deeply unethical. And it made me wonder what philosophers think about it, and why they seem silent when the scientists get on with exploitation of the brains of living beings, from cockroaches to monkeys and not long to the humans. I find it kind of interesting that we seldom condemn and condone, we seldom condemn these actions, these ethically reprehensible actions, because technology seems to be the fetish which we all kind of we all kind of serve. And then, of course, Westworld the idea of Westworld is a microcosm, like a Baudrillardian kind of simulation. Made me think about the obsession with colonizing the brain and satisfying the drives. So the drives, satiating the drives means like a colonization of desire. And that, for me, politically means that the kind of violence and insatiable greed of Western Anglo-Saxon culture has become kind of planetary. And that means that the alternative way, like a search for different ways of living, a different kind of relationship to desire, just seems like totally utopian and a pipe dream. And Bernard Stiegler is interesting here because he talks about the kind of delinking of the drives from desire. That means leads to a crisis of sublimation. It means an impossibility of elevation above the drives. And that means the complete annihilation of love. This is the exploration of the hyper-realism of the drives through violence. You can find it in Westworld in abundance. And what does Westworld do? Yeah, it kind of conceals the fact that this is our society today, a society without love and just this kind of insatiable drive to, satisfy the drives. And I find it fascinating how Westworld functions in this way to conceal the fact that society is just becoming the colonization of the brain through artificial intelligence and algorithms. And that means the search is on for an algorithm capable of comprehending and exploiting the unconscious. And that means what? That does that mean? That means the kind of colonization of desire. That means the control of desire by marketing and business interests, which are totally aligned with capitalism's base tendencies. So this has much, I think, to say to the question of democracy, given the fact our fetish or infatuation with artificial intelligence means we're just giving up on the human, and just not even the philosophically like anti-human, but just anti-human. I suppose, okay, cynics might say there's some reason for this, given the fact that millions and millions of people were brutally murdered in the 20th century. Okay, fine. But I'm wondering, like the infatuation with artificial intelligence, it just hides the fact that we cannot forecast or expect a different way to live. And this means what? This means that the going over to artificial intelligence expresses the dark hyperrealism of the drives and the impossibility of going over to alterity, to the other as such. That means the impossibility of love as such. And I hope that answers your question.